This is the Making Waves podcast. My name is Dave Roman, and we're here with Wade Talkington. Wade, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
Could you tell us just a little bit about your background experience? Where are you from?
I'm originally from Alabama, and my wife and I have been living in Sioux Falls for a little under 4 years, and we've really enjoyed and loved the people here, and it's been a great move, a great experience for us.
I like to think of Sioux Falls as an overgrown small town.
That's pretty much it, yes. About 210,000 people. It's about a tolerable size for us, yes, because we've been in larger cities, lived in larger cities in the past.
You have personal experience with and been involved with the business of recreational marijuana.
That is correct, yes.
So please tell us about it. What's your experience and what have you learned from the legalized recreational marijuana?
Well, it's a long story, and if you don't mind, I think it's better if I just start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning.
And lead up. It's a story of basically hubris, and that's basically pride for those of you who are classically educated, and stupidity and greed. So I think it's a good story. It pretty much checks all the boxes. So I'll start.
Sounds like an epic story.
It is an epic story. It's a story which has given me a lot of battle scars, a lot of business battle scars.
Songs will be sung.
Songs will be sung. So I'll start from the beginning. Around 2015, I had reconnected with a friend from business school. I'd gone to University of Vanderbilt School of Business. I went to School of Business and got an MBA when I was much older.
Good school.
And I had a friend there who was in school with me, and he had moved to Newport Beach, California, a very nice area. It was much nicer now back then than it is now. And he'd been involved in investment banking with Lehman Brothers, and of course Lehman Brothers went out of business when he was working with some smaller firms. And he approached me about an opportunity to invest in a medical cannabis dispensary. Of course, back then, this would have been about 2015. The rec business had not been put in place in California. The recreational cannabis sales were not allowed. It was only medical. And it seemed like an incredible opportunity. And I got involved with him and another individual, and we purchased a retail license that was existing. It had been an existing license for quite some time. And we bought it, and then we ended up getting some people to run this for us. We actually had a store site. Mm-hmm. I was not involved in the day-to-day management. I was an investor in it. And so what happened at that point was it was purely medical, and we were serving a tremendous number of people. And just right off the bat, I am totally in favor of medical cannabis and its uses. I've had family members who have used it to great effect. We were selling product to actually the final users were tended to be adolescents and children, but their parents would come in and buy the oils and so forth for the treatment of autism. And these were real scripts. They were not going to, the Dr. Feel-Good script mill and getting, saying, oh, well, I have insomnia. Well, here you go. There's your script. Give me $100. These were legitimately diagnosed people. They had pain. They had, they were having some onset dementia, which would cause anger issues. They were children with autism. And we were servicing a lot of people at that time. Mm-hmm. And it was a good business. And it was at that point, we were doing quite well. Had a lot of people coming in. It was a very good location. This location is less than a mile from Beverly Hills. It's a very good location, very high-end customers, very safe area for someone to go and buy this thing. So we were going along well, and the opportunity came up. I guess you could say, I'm going to put opportunity in quotes because it hasn't been such a great opportunity to not only have the medical license, but to transfer also and get a recreational license or an adult use license is what they call it. Of course, that's a misnomer.
Was that a change in the law that allowed that, or was it already illegal?
That was a change in the law. So the voters of California voted to allow that, and then so the state of California opened that up to people to apply for these licenses, for the recreational licenses or adult use licenses. Mm-hmm. So not knowing any better, well, and I don't think we would have done anything different, because if your competition is going in that direction, you have to go in that direction as well. So we applied for it and we did get it. So then we started selling recreational sales. I hate that term, adult use sales, but they're calling it recreational use here in South Dakota. So let's just call it that.
So can we be clear that means anybody can walk in and get marijuana from you?
Anyone over the age of 20, anyone 21 or older.
So they show
can go in and show ID. They do not need a script from a doctor.
Okay.
They're using it as, it'd be the same as a 21-year-old going into a store and buying beer or alcohol. Same kind of thing. So we did get that license, and sales were going. It didn't really affect sales. They were up some, not tremendously up though, which was a strange thing. At that time, when we were doing this, the state of California, and this is, and I wasn't aware of this at the time, but I've been informed much more recently within the past year that by an attorney in Orange County, a man named David Kerrigan, who told me that whenever they put all of this into place with the recreational use in California, I guess it would be the California Franchise Board or the Budget Office, whoever does these models for the state of California. People in the legislature had asked, well, what will the illegal sales be as a percentage of legal licensed sales? And the estimate they came up with was, well, the illegal sales are probably going to still be high, about 75% of the legal sales. So in other words, I'm just going to throw out numbers here. I don't know the revenue. So if the state had $1 billion in revenue, then $750 million would be illegal. And so you'd have $1 billion in legal sales, $750 million in off the books illegal sales.
Now, why would you want to have a legitimate business and pay taxes if you didn't have?
Absolutely. What the shocking thing is that those numbers absolutely went out the window. The number of, according to this attorney, they use a pretty high-powered attorney. He used to be the chief counsel for the Irvine companies. Pretty high-powered job. Apparently, those percentages are now multiples. The illegal sales are multiples higher than the legal sales. In other words, so you have $1 billion and maybe $3 billion in illegal sales. Mm-hmm. And that's for the exact reason you pointed out there. There's the problem that one problem that California did was they put in very high taxes. There's their annual licensing fees. There's a 29% tax, and there also compliance fees. So in other words, you have to have the overhead in your shops to make sure that because we're legal, we are actually a licensed dispensary, and we're selling products to people who are still coming in for medical reasons. You have to make sure that the product you're selling has no pesticides, no chemicals in it, and they test. And if you have a product that has some of this stuff, it may not be the fault of the buyer we have in the shop. It may just be that the manufacturer did something in manufacturing and it's contaminated. It's got to be thrown out. Whereas your average gangster who's selling out of the back of his trunk doesn't really care about that. So that created a situation where it was much easier for a lot of people to go and access the illegal market to buy cannabis. Another thing was that there was no enforcement in California of illegal dispensaries. So in other words, they're called pop-up dispensaries. Someone will just rent a space and put their wares in there and open up, and maybe they're in business for a week and make a bunch of money, don't pay taxes, shut it down, and move to another location. Also, due to the wonders of modern technology, there are actually phone apps. One is called Weed Maps. Weed Maps. You may have heard of this.
I've not heard.
Okay, well, you're about to learn. Weed Maps, where a person can download an app on the phone, and it will show you where all the dispensaries are, legal and illegal, and it will also tell you who delivers. So there's marijuana delivery, and the state does not regulate this. They don't shut any of them down. And at least in Los Angeles, there's no enforcement. So
it's legal.
So literally, and I've got a story about that as well. So literally, you can have a gang member with a trunk full of marijuana, and he will deliver from location to location on the app. So that pretty much sort of ended our higher-end Beverly Hills clientele in that area, because if you're in your home and the guy comes over and sells to you, that's a lot more safe for you than you having to drive to Compton to buy on the street. You're not going to do that. But this makes it a much more comfortable environment because you're buying it at your residence.
Right.
So that decimated sales.
Sales for your...
Yeah, for our dispensary. And it's decimated other dispensaries as well. Probably one of the cleanest, most well-run, best-managed dispensaries that I know of in the Los Angeles area is called the Kind Center, Kind. It's run by a man named Brian Bowling, and his business has been completely devastated. And our business, we were doing around $15,000 to $20,000 a day. Our revenues now are about $3,000. Mm-hmm. But what is more terrifying this is some of the fine. I'm going to lose money, and that's okay. That things happen. You're an investor. You make your bets. You win, you lose. What's more concerning, though, on this topic for me for South Dakota are the public safety issues. Because what we have seen in California is that you're having illegal growers and illegal operations that are increasingly managed and run by Mexican drug cartels. And an example of that is there was an article recently, and I believe it was either the San Francisco Chronicle or the San Jose Mercury News, about people who own beautiful tracts of land in Northern California and near the Sierras who cannot access those lands for vacation purposes or get to their vacation homes because they're being overrun by cartels and by grows, by illegal marijuana grows. And if they go into these areas, they're actually people with machine guns, and then law enforcement is very reluctant to get involved with these things because of the firepower. They're undermanned, and so that's created a huge issue as well. There are massive illegal grows in the Angeles National Forest, which is just east of Los Angeles, that are not really being controlled. California, to be such a fruitcake state in as far as environmental concerns, these people are destroying the lands. They're using chemicals, pesticides. They're getting in the rivers. They're destroying fish stocks. And the state of California is doing absolutely nothing about it.
I hear they're stealing water.
They're stealing water. And that's a concern in South Dakota because South Dakota has potentially from time to time has water problems. I mean, we're having sort of a drought right now in Eastern.
That's a big deal in California because they are a arid state.
Very arid state, yes.
So stealing water from the farmers so they can't plant or water their almond trees or stuff, that's a very serious issue.
It's a huge problem.
And I also have read that they're basically just planting marijuana on somebody else's land. And
they are.
Yeah.
And the owners can't do anything about it. They call law enforcement, and law enforcement's not willing to get involved. Yeah. And I can't really blame them because you're up against a cartel army, and and you may have, I guess you may have your, Ithaca shotgun, but what's that going to do against an AK-47?
That's 6 or 10 deputies, and they have families.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a super huge problem. Now I know that someone listening to this will probably say, well, yes, that's California, and they're all nuts there. And we're logical. We are logical Midwestern people, and we are sensible, logical Midwestern people. And there is a lot of truth to that. You are very sensible, logical Midwestern people. You have a political construct that's not of your making here in this state, and this is going to be a little bit controversial and dangerous tonight, whatever, but you just have to take it and like it, and if you don't like it, you could argue with Dave here. You have a political construct in this state that, in my opinion, might act in a similar way to the national forests and the wild uninhabited lands in California, and that is the native reservations in this state. And why is that? Because there has been, and that's been pointed out by our governor, and it's been pointed out by a former attorney general of ours, that there is the high likelihood of extreme cartel activity on some of these reservations. And, that is not a good combination when you have, legalized marijuana, uncontrolled growths, and then you have something that might serve as a distribution point that's unchecked. And, of course, the local sheriff in these areas has no jurisdiction on an Indian reservation.
And you get like maybe 2 or 3 deputies.
Yeah. and they're not going to be able to do anything. And so the other thing is that this was brought up by the, very eloquently, in my opinion, I might say, by the wife of the Minnehaha County Sheriff, that what they're producing now, the marijuana that's being produced, is not that I was there, I was too young, but not what was smoked at Woodstock. I mean, this is very powerful. These are very powerful strains of marijuana. And there was an individual who wrote an article recently claiming that, well, this is all just fear porn. You know, that's not true, that it's not going to be a highly addictive or a gateway drug or something like this. And I think that was someone who writes a newsletter out of Brookings, I believe, or something like that online. But anyway, so I totally disagree with that, because what's happening is that if you're running a cartel and you're the point person in a U.S. state and your job is to distribute the marijuana, you want addicted users. So what is going to keep you from spiking some of your product with minute doses of fentanyl to try to addict for opioids? It is quite common in California. What's to keep someone from doing that? And so while we're logical, grounded Midwestern people here, some of the same structures or very similar structures exist here that exist in California that I believe people need to be aware of. I think that for that reason, people should reject recreational use marijuana in this state.
People forget, Ronald Reagan came from California. California used to be a Republican state. It used to be a high-trust society. Rural parts of California were a lot like rural parts of South Dakota, where people didn't lock their doors. Everybody knew each other, and there was a high-trust society where we'd have rural gas stations where you just have a cigar box on the top of the gas pump where people would make change for themselves and they'd pump their own gas. But that's changed. And if it happened in California to change their high-trust culture into a low-trust culture, that can happen here.
I believe it can. And it's something that people need to be aware of. Is that the type of change you want to happen to South Dakota society? And I don't think it is.
So your premise is that with the legalization of recreational marijuana, cartels will have an operational advantage, a competitive advantage to move in.
I think they will, and I think there's not enough law enforcement to stop it. And also, I'd like to make a comment also about the role of state government in this. So California put together a massive bureaucracy to deal with this, and they failed. Now, that is obviously to be expected. I not to completely understand that. But today, we had my wife and I were at an event, and we heard the Attorney General speak, and he was on. He gave a press conference, I believe, maybe it was earlier today or yesterday, about some corruption that they were uncovering within the state of South Dakota. So to claim that there is no corruption and that there's something, everything's going to work smoothly, I think is highly delusional. Things like that, when you're dealing with that amount of money, it's so easy to flip people or to have corruption occur, and especially with this business. And if I just may add one more thing here.
Absolutely.
So we're dealing with these carbon pipeline issues in South Dakota. I don't want to go off onto a total tangent that I'm not an expert. I'll admit I'm not an expert on this.
Next podcast.
No. No desire. I've got enough things to deal with in my regular business. But that's a business that, for good or ill, I'm not casting judgment here, requires taxpayer subsidies to be profitable. Mm-hmm. The ethanol business requires taxpayer subsidies to be profitable. This business does not require any subsidy at all to be profitable. It's highly lucrative. Now, so as a result of that, the temptation of that much money coming through a business can mean that you have, people are tempted by this thing. So if you have a regulatory framework that at least skips part of it and at least gets rid of the recreational part, but you have just the medical part, which is useful, and you have some control from maybe the state health department, and you have pharmacies involved with creating the materials, the product for people. I think that does put an extra layer of control over things that's needed.
So your experience, though, is that when they made recreational marijuana legal in California, it drove out legitimate businesses, and legitimate businesses just folded.
Legitimate businesses are hanging on. They're breaking even. They'll have a profitable month, an unprofitable month. Let me just give you an example. There was I'm not going to name the name. I have a name if you want it off record, but there was a guy with known gang affiliations in California who was pulled over with 500 pounds of marijuana in the trunk of his car. And he was given a $250 fine.
For what?
I think it was a traffic violation.
You ran around.
Yeah, he had it, or tail light out or something like that. He was pulled over by Ponch and John Chips, that old show.
Okay.
CHP.
Okay.
Got a $250 fine, and that was it. And I don't know. They may have confiscated his goods. I don't know, but he didn't go to jail. Mm-hmm. Now, in not too long ago, at least I would imagine in South Dakota, not too long ago, that would give you a pretty hefty prison sentence. 500 pounds.
One would hope
of weed in the trunk of your car. So that's just they're just overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed. And then, of course, California has a tremendous problem now with in-migration, and the borders are open, and that creates a bigger problem with more dangerous drugs. So the police say, I can go after the illegal weed shop, or I can deal with this person with 100 pounds of fentanyl. What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. So they have to prioritize what they're doing for for law enforcement.
Vote no on I Am 29.
Vote no on I Am 29. That is my opinion.
Wait, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this.
All right. This has been the Making Waves podcast. My name is Dave Ropeman, and we've been here with Wade Talkington.